Let's speak now to Professor Sir John Curtice, British political scientist and Professor of Politics at the University of Strathclyde and, of course, the doyen of polling. Great to have you on board, Sir John. Well, just extrapolate these results. I mean, I've heard stuff like if you did extrapolate this at these kind of swings at the general election, the Tories would be reduced to 8 seats. Of course, by-elections are never a reliable predictor of what will happen at a general election. But pretty bad news for the Tories. Analyse it for us.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, truth is you shouldn't really take the swings from a by-election and say, well, what would happen if such a swing occurred in a general election? Because you're right, the swings in by-elections are often exaggerated. What you can do, however, is to compare by-elections with by-elections. And the problem for the Conservatives is that these two by-elections underline the message of the by-elections last autumn, which is that the government's record in by-elections is now the worst one for any party since the 1992 to 97 Parliament, at the end of which, of course, the Conservatives did suffer a serious defeat. There's kinds of swings we've been seeing ranging from the 16% or so in Kingswood all the way through to the 28% swing in Wellingborough and the previous swings in Selby and Tamworth, etc. They're all of the kind that we last saw in that fateful Parliament. And meanwhile, the Conservatives have now made a net loss of 8 by-election seats in the Parliament. Again, you have to go back to the 1990s for a precedent. So the Conservatives were kind of quite keen to say, well, look, governments have trouble in by-elections, yes, but not necessarily this much trouble. And I think also one crucial thing about these by-elections, the Prime Minister was trying to suggest that this was a mid-term contest. I have news for the Prime Minister. We are in the last year of this Parliament. He has to go to the country before too long. And this is the stage by which, even if governments have had trouble in mid-term, they should now be beginning to show signs of recovery. But at signs of recovery, that for the Conservatives, there are still basically naught.
I mean, looking at the votes themselves, which is always interesting to do, and comparing like on like with 2019, which of course was a general election and not a by-election. Yep. What has stood out for me is in Wellingborough in 2019, Labour got around 13,000 votes, and this time round, 13,000 votes. In Kingswood in 2019, they got 16,000 votes. This time round, 11,000 votes. So they might be popping the champagne and saying, haven't we done well? But it doesn't seem to me to reflect much enthusiasm for Sir Keir Starmer's party either.
Well, what is certainly true is that the turnout was low in these by-elections. It was particularly down quite markedly in Kingswood. Indeed, you know, if you compare the 38% turnout in Wellingborough now with the last time there was a by-election in Wellingborough, which is all the way back in 1969, then 70% of people turned out to vote. But those days seem long since over. There is actually, I think, a broader story, and it's a broader story which speaks to what the Conservatives are saying. By the way, I think virtually every set of by-elections, when a party does badly, the first thing it says, and sometimes the only thing it says, oh, it was a low turnout, therefore it doesn't really matter. To be honest, the Conservatives were saying that last autumn. It's a repeatedly made excuse, and frankly, it is little more than an excuse. But across all the by-elections in this Parliament now, on average, support for the turnout has been 28 points down. That is even higher than the previous high, which was in the 1997 to 2001 Parliament, when at the end of which turnout in the general election fell to just 59%. So the honest truth is, and this is not just a challenge for the Conservatives, it's a challenge for all the parties. I don't think at the moment we can necessarily assume that we're going to get a normal, quote unquote, level of turnout in a general election, but rather that we may well get the kind of turnout that we had in 2001. And if that happens, well, you know, the truth is, the message that's going to come from many voters, discontented as they are, unhappy as many of them are, is that they don't really have much confidence in any of the political parties. And yes, that includes Labour, but it also includes the Conservatives.
Last question, Sir John. From these results and from the various polls we've been looking at over the past few months, I mean, is there any way that the Tories could win at the general election?
Well, if there was a dramatic recovery in the economy, if NHS waiting times were to be seriously reduced, because those are really the two main things that are pushing the Conservatives down. And perhaps also Mr. Sunak was able to come up with give us some idea of what his plan actually was, so that we had some coherent idea of what his vision for the country was. Maybe they could turn it around. But you can see the obstacles in front of him. That task is a very, very substantial one. And in a sense, what we're now getting the sense of is that time is simply running out. He's been Prime Minister now for what, about 16 months? The Conservatives have made virtually no progress in that time in repairing the damage that they suffered in the wake of Liz Truss's fiscal event. They've now got, what, 9 months left. And so unless things change pretty rapidly very soon, the writing is going on, which is already, I think, on the wall, is going to be in bold.
Sir John, thank you so much. Great to talk to you.